and welcome to a Monday night Showdown preview. I, of course, am Adam Levitan. As usual, I am joined by a man who will be winning $2.5 million next week in the Draftkings World Championship Live Final. Yes, that's right. Mike Leone yesterday qualified for the $12.5 million prize pool, 200-man entry, $62,000 seat value Draftkings Live Final with a contrarian team yesterday that was pretty out there, including Jonathan Taylor, who went absolutely nuclear. And I guess the Ridley Keenan stuff was not extremely contrarian, but I thought that was my favorite kind of mini correlation of the week was the Keenan Ridley stuff as well. But congrats to you. Tell the people what jersey you're wearing and what you did to celebrate last night.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm wearing Barry Sanders, Oklahoma State. No relation to the slate other than it's the closest I could find to a Browns colored jersey.
Well, wait, isn't that Justice Hill's? I thought that was a Justice Hill jersey. Didn't Justice Hill go to Oklahoma State?
Oh, I don't even know.
I believe so.
If I had a Justice Hill College jersey, that would be kind of sad, though. Already sad enough with all my Justice Hill season-long shares from last season. But it's weird qualifying for the slate, like the very last set of qualifiers, because it's already this Sunday. And I hadn't even really kind of realized that. So I didn't do too much to sell. I celebrated with the Bills' victory. Mm-hmm. Celebrations on top of celebrations, Adam.
Yeah. Love the Bills. Bills are the best. Very excited about that. We're going to do a separate YouTube show either tomorrow or Wednesday going over Wiggins and Leone. By the way, Wiggins also qualified yesterday for the live final. I mean, these live finals, you guys have probably heard me talk about them before. They're extremely, extremely difficult to get into because the qualifiers are so top heavy. But once you get to the live final, again, 200-man field, pretty flat payouts on a $12.5 million prize pool. So it's pretty cool for sure. I think Leone will be one of the favorites as someone who has been playing and beating these kind of 100 to 200-man fields at high stakes all season. But, we'll see. Should be
I'm not going to play scared. We're gonna have an out there team for sure.
Oh yeah. Yes. Leone loves having the out there teams. But anyways, that's what we'll do Tuesday or Wednesday. Today we are going to go over tonight's showdown slate between Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens versus Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns in an AFC North battle. Before we get into the show, I want to remind you guys of two things. First, please subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. We've been doing everything we can to, smash the like button as well to bring you guys as much free content as well while keeping the vast majority of it for subscribers only. Also, if you hit the notification bell, you'll know when we go live. Second thing, NBA is back, baby. NBA's preseason is a go. There will be a show if you subscribe to any NBA package, whether it be draft kit or season long, you will have access to the preseason content. We're doing 3 days this week, but most importantly, regular season starts on the 22nd, 8 days until the NBA regular season. And much like our NFL product, we will be all in on being on top of every piece of news, adjusting all our content and analysis and projections to reflect that. You can get by, I think. Leone might disagree. I think you can get by maybe without looking at projections in NFL, especially if you're playing tournaments. But in NBA, I don't think there's any possible way you can get by without looking at projections. And I'm quite confident with Leone and Drew and Gallagher and Wiggins that we will have the best possible projections. Anything on NBA, Leone, before we move on?
Dink is heading up the product. He's the best. He's had a profitable season for all his NBA seasons. So it's just exciting to work with him and also with Gallagher, Wiggins, guys who just have this combination of being super passionate about the NBA. Like they love it, like at its very core. And then they're also sharp DFS players. So I'm really looking forward to it this season.
All right, let's get into tonight's showdown slate. I think Lamar Jackson slates are unique because he obviously, even in this down season, he's going to project so far above everybody else. And we actually have a lot of data on Lamar Jackson showdown slates because there's been so many of them. And Cody's talked about that before in some of his Lamar Jackson Ravens showdown slates. I'm not sure if he did it here. But anyways, Lamar Jackson is going to be the story of the slate. Can you get away with playing non-Lamar Jackson captain teams here? We know he's going to be massively owned in the captain spot, but still there's going to be plenty of people who want to be different and don't. So what do you think about playing Lamar and captain tonight?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a different Lamar this season from last season that makes you feel a little bit better if you're going to fade him in the captain spot. We've got him projected at 24% ownership there, which is really pretty high. And some of his pass catchers like Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown, combined, we only have those guys at 14% captain ownership. So even though Lamar obviously can get there with his legs, I do like, if you were doing a single entry type team, probably getting away from the Lamar captain and seeing if I could get to Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews in captain, one of his pass catchers. It's always difficult with these rushing quarterbacks who are also efficient because you're not racking up catches.
Mm-hmm.
But the target share when healthy has been a little bit more concentrated this year than in the past on Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews. So I do think there's a chance you get a game where a pass catcher is outscores or scores enough with Lamar that the salary difference allows them to be in the captain optimal. And Cody does, he looks at the past distributions, and you see why the Lamar captain conversation is so difficult, because generally we see receiver distributions kind of matching the quarterbacks on the high end. But you can see here with Lamar, that's not totally the case for him.
Yeah. I think thinking through specifically how quarterbacks and pass catchers accumulate their points is important. So like yesterday, I was fine playing Teddy Bridgewater double stacks because Teddy might not have the 30, 35 point ceiling, but he can complete 25, 30, 35 passes in a game. That's exactly what happened. He completed 30 passes, and Teddy stacks were fine if he brought it back with Hamler, because even though Teddy didn't go off, both Robbie and Curtis Samuel caught 8 or 9 balls, 7 or 8 balls on top of that. But the problem is with Lamar, the way he accumulates passes not through completions. It's through bigger plays. It's through efficiency. It's through his legs. So I think it's a tougher fade for me at captain with Lamar, but I understand what you're saying. I do want to note from an injury perspective here, everybody's back for the Ravens except for Des Bryant. So Mark Andrews is back, Willie Snead is back. All that's reflected in our projections. The big injury news, if you call it big, Austin Hooper, we're not expecting to play. We are projecting him out as of now. We'll get to some of the fallout from that.
I just want to note on the distribution stuff, you can see with Baker's that obviously he's further to the right because quarterbacks score more often than the pass catchers. But if you look at like the really high end outcomes for Baker, you see where the pass catchers like Jarvis Landry is even more right-tailed than him. And you see where the skill players match him, which doesn't happen with Lamar as much, which is what Adam's saying. It's difficult fate of Lamar and captain.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Baker for a second. Baker broke out last week. That was against the Jaguars for his best game of the entire season by a mile. For most of the season, Baker has been extremely conservative. Baker has been rattled heavily when he does not have a clean pocket. I think Baker is an interesting fade here. Quarterbacks are always massively owned on Showdown, but I could see Baker going back into a shell here. People looking at game logs, they think Baker has this massive ceiling. I'm skeptical to think that was anything more than a one-off outlier. What do you think about Baker tonight?
Yeah, I'm with you. And, Cody referenced my pass rate over expectation in the article, and the Browns are one of the run heaviest teams in the league, relative to expectation. And it's hard for quarterback to consistently hit a ceiling based solely off efficiency when they don't run, when they're not passing a whole ton. So unless there's just a dramatic shift in play calling, I think there's difficulties for Baker captain, both in him achieving his ceiling, but also if he does have a ceiling game, you've got a pretty, in terms of the top two receivers in Higgins and Landry, it's pretty condensed, the target share there. And when you get those condensed target shares, a lot of times that means one of his pass catchers is likely to score right with him. And, the exact opposite of Lamar, where he can get there on his legs and or just some long plays, but Jarvis Landry can just rack up 10 catches and you're going to need him in the captain spot and not Baker if Baker goes off. So you kind of would play Baker and Flax and Landry at captain. So I would keep that in mind. We did have sort of like the annoying Tom Brady game from Baker last week where he spread out the touchdowns. I think there was an O-line touchdown. I think there was a QB sneak touchdown, but that also was sort of fluky, as was how many points he scored.
Yeah. And when you mentioned how tight Cleveland is, generally speaking, Cleveland's one of the tightest pass catching groups in the league. They only had 3 wide receivers active last week. I believe it was DPJ, and Landry and Higgins, obviously. And now with Hooper getting hurt, they're down to Njoku and Harrison Bryant at tight ends. So, it's really, really tight for Cleveland right now. And yeah, Leone's bringing up last week. I mean, yeah, super, super tight. They did not. Jamarcus Bradley did play a little bit, and we don't know if he'll be called up off the practice squad or not. The wide receiver 4 for Cleveland tonight is up in the air. They signed Marvin Hall. We don't know if he'll be active. They do have Bradley on the practice squad. They do have until an hour and a half before the game to call him up if they should do so. Still, I don't think wide receiver 4 for Cleveland is very appealing. I know they're extremely cheap. Marvin Hall is $200. I just don't know if he can be ready yet to play for Cleveland.
Yeah, it sounds like he's activated, but it's really uncertain if he's really going to play emergency active. That he's the type of guy that if you were playing large field MME and you knew he was active, you'd maybe take some shots on him to get unique from the field. But anything other than large field MME, it just seems, completely unnecessary.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the running backs. I mean, Nick Chubb, undoubtedly one of the best running backs in the league by a mile. However, it is hard to get excited about Nick Chubb when he's sharing work with Kareem Hunt and he doesn't have a real pass game role. And now the Ravens, who are getting Brandon Williams back, I don't know if they'll get Calais Campbell back, but they're getting Brandon Williams back. The matchup is getting more difficult for Nick Chubb here. Not that it's like an impossible matchup for him, but still, it's just, I don't think I've played Nick Chubb once all season, maybe once in some tournaments. I did, and I think he's better than Kareem Hunt, but he just keeps sharing and sharing and sharing. What do you think about handling Nick Chubb at this expensive price tag? He is $10,200 in the flex tonight.
Yeah, I call him, baby Derrick Henry, baby big dog, because it's a similar thing to a lesser magnitude, but because he's picking up his huge games off big runs, touchdowns, like rushing efficiency, more or less, that can go bad very easily, but sometimes it breaks a big play. It goes good pretty quickly. And you see in the distributions, a lot of these guys are like kind of like bell curves. And then you look at Nick Chubb's and it's like this flat, like uniform distribution from 0 to 40. It's pretty nuts because he could score anywhere. The range on him is so wide. It's not like a normal distribution like it is somewhat for some of these other guys. So I feel like he's going to be over-owned on this slate as the highest owned running back. If you were to fade between, Baker and Lamar, I'd rather fade, Chubb of that group of expensive guys. So as you said, it's just difficult when you're projecting for only a little bit of pass work and then you're splitting carries on top of that. Cleveland is so run heavy that when things go well, it can go really well and he can get there, but there's routes to failure for a really high owned guy on a showdown slate. And I would lean towards being kind of contrarian and going against the field. Like if I was doing a single entry and wanted to get off the board, I could see fading Chubb altogether.
Yeah, Kareem Hunt is $4,000 cheaper. The price gap down to the Ravens guys though is massive. J.K. Dobbins is $8,200, and I like Dobbins better, but he's $8,200. Gus is $5,200. Mark Ingram is down at $2,800. So yeah, I certainly like J.K. Dobbins better. The Ravens staff seems to like Gus Edwards a lot. We have the best value, I think, would be Mark Ingram, but only 5.6 projection, so really low. Even though it's good value, really low projection. What do you think about handling Kareem Hunt and then the Ravens running backs?
Yeah, I like Hunt a lot. I feel like he's got a nice floor ceiling combination. It's definitely a different role than Chubb because that pass down work just gives you a little bit more of a floor. And then, the games they do run from ahead, they kind of seem to even out the rush share a little bit more when we get the really heavy volume because they want to keep Chubb somewhat fresh. So he's kind of gets it good both ways in terms of the target floor, but also some upside in the run game. So I like Hunt the most of these top three. I also don't trust the Baltimore allocation to the running backs a lot. As you mentioned, they seem like they like Gus Edwards. And while Dobbins has elevated recently, they've got the draft capital. Eye test, it seems like they would utilize him more. We're projecting that, and there's certainly some downside here. They just don't target the running backs a lot. So even though he's the most targeted of their three backs, it's still a lower target projection than we have for Kareem Hunt. So I like Hunt the most in terms of pure value. I think Ingram's really interesting for tournaments. Now, he only played 11 snaps last game, coming back from the COVID list. I think that's up, and of those 11 snaps, he got 6 carries. So and they do use him at the goal line sometimes. So I think he's interesting if you think that the snaps tick back up another week back. Now, if you think he's just starting to get buried from Dobbins, you wouldn't want to use him, but that's why he's going to be this low price and this low owned.
Yeah, I mean, on the Ravens guys, it's hard for them to find a ceiling because it's hard for them to get the 100-yard bonus, and they don't really catch passes. And so, just touchdowns are going to make all the difference. So trying to project which Ravens back gets the touchdown is difficult. I think it's been somewhat random throughout the year and who's ever in the game at the time, but that's what it's going to come down to. And so there's going to be some parallelization there too. I don't think that people are going to be too excited about the Ravens RBs.
Yeah, in cash games, a lot of times we talk about always taking the main RB from each side. And this slate, it's a little bit different where I probably, if I was playing cash, wouldn't play a Baltimore running back. I think Hunt is really viable on the Cleveland side, but I don't think I'd play Dobbins. I think I'd honestly feel more comfortable with a Baltimore pass catcher, even though they are, not a very pass heavy team.
Okay, let's go to wide receiver. The expected 3 wide receiver set for Marquise Brown tonight will be Marquise Brown, obviously. Willie Snead is back to take over the slot role, which Devin DuVernay struggled so badly. And then I think it'll be Miles Boykin. Des Bryant remains out. Miles Boykin played 87% of the snaps last week. I mean, I don't know if he was ready for that because Des got scratched so late, but he did it. He had 1 catch on 3 targets, I believe, did score a touchdown on it. Boykin is 2,200. Snead is up at 58, and Marquise Brown Hollywood, of course, is 7,400. I have this bet, and I have this bet with Dink, and I have this bet with other people too about Will Fuller versus Marquise Brown, most fantasy points for the entire season. And now I'm scared because Marquise Brown has come to life a little bit at the exact same time that Will Fuller gets suspended. Not expecting Denzel Ward again tonight for the Browns. What do you think about the Ravens wideouts?
Yeah, the Ravens are difficult to project because we've had 2 weeks of kind of, I don't want to say nonsense games, but with the COVID stuff, it's been really chaotic. You had the RG3 game, and then last week, Snead wasn't ready. Des gets scratched before the game. So it's difficult to know what they're going to do. I have DuVernay running ahead of Boykin because it seemed like that's how it was before those 2 weeks. But as you mentioned, Boykin played a ton last week, and DuVernay has struggled. So maybe that comes a little bit even. Honestly, like Willie Snead seems like relatively safe for a cash game type guy. That target share was growing into the high teens. I think he was even out targeting Marquise Brown prior to the 2 games. And then Marquise Brown, like you saw it last week, a 47% target share because they just had no one and they were feeding him. So I do wonder if the field overplays Marquise a little bit based on those last 2 games, but there's also a chance that they're starting to see they need to get him the ball. So
I would note on here, we need to fix Devin DuVernay's projected ownership, as I don't think people are going to play him nearly as much as we have here. And also, I think that Marquise Brown is going to be really owned because people people see the game log. They see that he's been being used more lately, and there's not that many guys that can break the slate, let alone guys that can break the slate at 7,400. Like for him to be priced so close to J.K. Dobbins and, Kareem Hunt and Rashard Higgins, like people are always excited about Marquise Brown, like in the same way they're excited about, Henry Ruggs and KJ Hamler, except with the actual number 1 role, not KJ Hamler turning 3 targets into 2 touchdowns.
The other thing on Brown, similar to Nick Chubb, for running back 1, for wide receiver 1, these guys have really low floors. And that's sometimes where you can pick up a ton of points on the field if you have popular guys that have low floors. Like even if from a mean projection, they're pretty strong because we know they have these high-end outcomes. The way you want to approach GPPs is kind of just play the opposite of the field on these guys where it's just difficult to predict. They can come in way lower than their projection. They can come in way higher than their projection.
Yeah. All right. On the Cleveland side, everybody knows Jarvis Landry, one of the better possession receivers in the league, ability to catch 10 balls in a game, as Leone already said. I always thought Rashard Higgins could play a little bit, man. And it did not surprise me to see him with the big opportunity last week. They had so many wind games. They had so many rain games. They had so many tough matchups. Then finally last week, they get a clean matchup in good weather against Jacksonville. Rashard Higgins goes off. Did not surprise me at all. I would be interested in Rashard Higgins here. I think Jarvis is okay as well. I think DPJ had, his rap in college was freak athlete and not enough production. Got there a little bit last week, but I typically don't think that they go deep enough to go to number 3 wide receiver. But if Austin Hooper is out, maybe that induces them to a little bit more three wide receiver sets. So what do you think about the Browns wideouts?
I think Landry and Higgins are very strong plays. I think their floors are pretty solid just because they just don't have a lot of depth, particularly with Hooper out. They were just running 3 wide receivers last week. Even if Hall or Bradley play in this game, I think it's just as a smattering of 4th wide receiver 4 snaps. I don't think he's taking anything away from Higgins and Landry. And a note on Higgins, I had tweeted about how great Justin Jefferson's been in terms of like both the really high catch rate and yards per catch. So I looked at the yards per catch leaders on Pro Football Reference. But if you look, further down this list, number 10, Rashard Higgins is 10th in the NFL in yards per catch. And he's done that with a 74% catch rate. Now, his sample size is a lot smaller, but I have been surprised at the explosiveness we've seen from Rashard Higgins. So I'm higher on Landry and Higgins relative to their price tags than I am, for example, Marquise Brown at his price tag on the Baltimore side of things. And I do wonder if people get cute with Marvin Hall in tournaments, if they just totally overlook Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I don't know, Adam, I would think at least for this first week with Hall in there, potentially that, DPJ keeps that role as the wide receiver 3. Not that it's a great role. We're talking, 10% of targets.
Yeah. No, I think DPJ keeps it for sure. All right. Tight ends are going to be very, very important to this slate because Lamar Jackson's number 1 target is very clearly Mark Andrews, who is back from the COVID list. On the other side, we have the Austin Hooper injury, which leaves Harrison Bryant, who, by the way, won the motherfucking Mackey Award. And then we also have David Njoku, who's been a freak athlete for a long time. And we have a team that likes to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. So Mark Andrews is going to play very much into this slate. What do you think about him? And then let's get to the Cleveland guys.
I like Andrews a lot because I think people like gravitate towards Marquise Brown because of the recent target share stuff. And Andrews has been more efficient over the course of his career. He's got a higher touchdown rate. We're expecting similar target share for him. I might be wrong is maybe this target share for Brown, even though it was a weird scenario, maybe that sticks a little bit and Andrews gets worked back in slowly. So there's some risk there, but for the most part, I've been high on Mark Andrews all season long. I think he's, the top receiving target for Baltimore that you want. And then I wouldn't be, I don't really know what to do with Luke Wilson. I probably, that'd be an MME only type thing. I don't really know what Baltimore is going to do formation wise, if they will have Luke Wilson kind of in that Nick Boyle role, or if they'll kind of scrap him and just play Andrews in 1 tight end sets.
Yeah, no, I think Luke Wilson plays enough to be part of MME fields for sure. The other side is interesting to me, though. I mean, Harrison Bryant played way ahead of David Njoku last time Austin Hooper was out. I actually played Harrison Bryant in cash. I think one of those slates when Njoku was out, he was like 2,500, and his role was actually pretty solid. He's not get bargain here at 4,200. Certainly not a bargain, but definitely in play. So I like him. And then, yeah, David Njoku for 1,000. I mean, you're betting on athletic talent with an increased role. I always am down for that, to bet on just raw talent whose role is rising and his price hasn't adjusted for that at $1,000. So yeah, I think both these guys are really good plays in both tournaments. I don't know about cash. I haven't really thought about Showdown cash enough to comment, but definitely good plays in tournament.
I mean, I could see Njoku as your salary filler at cash because it seems like he's somewhat safe for at least a couple catches at $1,000. I mean, a lot of these guys that are that cheap are going to get you stone zeros. So if you want to unlock the Lamar captain cash teams, Njoku probably allows you to do that. So I think that's reasonable. What's tough projecting them is the target share for the tight ends for Cleveland as a whole got to a point where it was really high. But then oddly, with Odell Beckham out, you would have thought it would stay high or even higher, but it's come down the last couple of weeks. So it's difficult to know what the combined target share for the tight ends will be. Right now, I think we have Harrison Bryant around 14% target share and Njoku around a 12% target share. So expecting them both to play quite a bit and be somewhat spread out with a lean towards Harrison Bryant there. I wouldn't play Stephen Carlson, the 3rd tight end. I don't even think I'd include him in my MME mix, but they play 2 Ts enough. I like to at least get a sprinkle on the 3rd tight end for them.
The defenses are priced typically where defenses have been for most of the season. I will note it's going to be, as Leonie said, Cleveland weather in the game tonight. A little bit windy, maybe a little bit of precipitation. I don't think it's anything to worry about too much, but 2 pretty good defenses. Certainly the Ravens with the better pedigree. I think defense and kicker fits into this slate because Justin Tucker, I know, is showing up in some optimals. Justin Tucker, one of the best kickers in the entire NFL. They let him bomb from a lot of different places on the field. What do you think about defense and kicker in the context of this slate?
Yeah, I think the kickers are definitely in play if you were to play a cash game, especially, assuming the weather is good. And it looks like it's going to be fine. Cleveland weather, it's not going to be great, but I think the kickers will be okay here. We have a lot of volatility in the skill players outside of the top guys on both sides. So the kickers give you a floor down there that the other guys don't have. I mentioned Njoku. Like, I like Njoku, but there's a possibility you play Njoku and a kicker with Lamar captain teams if you want to get an expensive pass catcher and Chubb or Hunt for running back on that side of things. Mm-hmm. Defense, I struggle with Adam. It always seems like defense is over-owned. The captain projections are pretty low on this slate that, we have seen Lamar struggle at times this year. If you've got a sub 1% owned Browns team at captain and MME, I don't think I'd mind that. I'd be more open to it. Whereas, Cody, if you've followed him on Twitter, has kind of been laughing at these gargantuan captain ownerships we've had on some of these defenses in recent showdown slates.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, unlike kickers, obviously the right tail, as you said, is way higher on the defense stuff because they can score touchdowns. They can score multiple touchdowns. Like, they can actually break the slate. But when it happens at expensive and high ownership, it's clearly not right, even though it happens a bunch. But yeah, I think they're at least worth mentioning on this slate. All right. Anything else you want to tell the people?
Nope. Just, again, we'll keep an eye on weather. Someone in the chat mentioned gusts up to 30. I had seen 10 to 15 miles per hour. We usually care mostly about the sustained wind. We had Chris Allen on our show earlier in the year talking about weather, and he was talking about in Cleveland too, the stadium heights like really high. So the wind, obviously, when it gets crazy, it affects the game, but we try not to overreact unless like we're certain the weather is going to affect things.
Yeah, man. I mean, here on the East Coast, it's been beautiful. Like, global warming for the win. It was like 60 and beautiful out yesterday here in Philly. We really haven't had many slates affected by weather, really, outside of that one that you mentioned when you had Chris Allen on the Saturday morning show. Okay,
we have to flag plant, right?
Oh God. Okay, go ahead.
I'll flag plant Mark Andrews. Why not? I've been in on him all season long. So give me Mark Andrews and then the Marquise Brown fade.
Yeah, I mean, I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to flag plant the motherfucking Mackey Award winner, Harrison Bryant, in a spot where I do not expect Austin Hooper to play. If Austin Hooper ends up playing, you can just delete this from the chat.
There's also, you might get him lower owned than Njoku just because of price too, which is nice.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, that's going to do it for this look at tonight's showdown slate between the Ravens and the Browns. Reminder, please, if you like this show, hit subscribe. We will continue to bring you added content here on YouTube. Smash the like button, hit the notification bell. Also, NBA, again, coming soon. Coming actually tonight with preseason. I know Dink is neck deep in tonight's preseason slate, already getting ready for tonight's show. And we'll actually have projections for tonight's slate, I believe. Actually, I think just top plays, but we are working on everything in the back end, getting set for the regular season. There it is. The draft kit is up and live too. If you play season-long fantasy hoops, I mean, there's got to be such a massive edge just by following some of this stuff that Gallagher's been talking about. I can't imagine. There's just so much less talk out there about season-long fantasy basketball. All right. Anyways, we've gone on long enough. Leone has dogs to get. For Leone, for producer Leone, for next week's $2.5 million DraftKings Live final winner, Leone, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.